Hi, everyone. Welcome to...
We stopped all the ASMR, right?
Are you going to do the introduction? Is that what's going on here?
No, you can go. Oh, my bad.
I'm just an innocent bystander.
That's why I was telling you should record a lead-in.
Well, we are live right now, so it's okay.
Oh, shut up, Josh.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the World's Smartest People Discuss, Episode 3. Today, we're going to be talking about the Hong Kong situation and those things up there. Jeffrey Epstein and the Spiderman controversy, if you can call it a controversy. So, yeah, without any further ado, let's start with our first topic, which is the protests in Hong Kong. So I have like a shitload of notes here for it. But is everyone kind of up to date here about it?
I would say not. I've heard about it, but I didn't.
Josh, are you...
I know a little bit. Like, I know that Hong Kong is not ruled...
Okay.
It's not technically part of China.
Yeah. So, over the past few months, we've been seeing protests that revolve around the proposed bill to extradite criminals from Hong Kong to mainland China. Hong Kong is an autonomous city-state, previously a British colony given back to China. It has its own constitution and law system, including free press and open internet. So this bill would allow Hong Kong authorities to detain suspected criminals and turn them over to countries or territories that do not have extradition agreements with Hong Kong. This would include China, which many Hong Kong citizens see as an authoritative state, which I think that everyone here can probably agree with.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I think so.
We're so professional here.
I know.
World's Smartest People Discuss.
Oh, you mean this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking up Hong Kong stuff. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm not telling you about it.
the idea behind that.
So we're starting this episode like that. Got it. Okay, good to know.
This show's always like that. There's not really anything ever besides just...
I mean, your tone of voice.
Us being smartasses towards each other.
That's true. Yes.
Okay, so
because we're the world's smartest people.
So that's kind of like the briefest summary of what's going on as far as, there's a lot more, but the bill is said to allow extradition of suspects of crimes with a penalty of 7 or more years in prison. So if it was under 7 years, that wouldn't apply to you. And it would not include crimes that would constitute a death penalty. So, yeah. So it's kind of like they don't want to send people off to their death, but also at the same time, if it's not a bad enough crime, then, and I don't know how strict they are in a lot of the Chinese, whatever they're called, territories or whatever.
Yeah,
I think they'd be
it's more so territories strict. With Hong Kong being itself like a democratically mixed political.
Yeah. So Hong Kong is straight up like a democracy, and basically the people there don't want to be giving up any of their democratic freedoms, even if if it's criminals, I guess. And I mean, I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Well, the problem is that they'd be judged under communist law.
Yeah.
Rather, where when they're judged in Hong Kong, it's kind of a mix of the two with the democratic values,
Well, yeah, I mean, like, we don't have... Like, if you did something in another country and came back to the United States, they might have someone, like... If you were, like, a danger to people here... But I don't see why they can't try him in Hong Kong still. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand.
The problem is that they'd start attacking journalists, and that's to start a slow suppression.
So I will get to that. So I did want to say that one of the main reasons that Hong Kong officials are pursuing this bill to begin with is because a Hong Kong man is suspected of murdering his girlfriend while on vacation in Taiwan. He is currently back in Hong Kong and cannot be tried in Taiwan because Hong Kong and Taiwan don't have a formal extradition agreement. So that's kind of like the excuse, the excuse they're using for pushing this bill really hard. Taiwan has expressed that they would come to an agreement without having to deal with an actual bill in place if Hong Kong would allow them to. But it's kind of weird, so we don't know. Yeah, it seems really weird.
There's a lot of intricacies.
Yeah, it seems like okay. So, so yeah, many protests have followed the announcement of the bill, with most being peaceful demonstrations, although a few resulting in confrontations between demonstrators and Hong Kong police. Initially, Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam announced that she will still be going forward with the legislation, saying she believes that there's a loophole in the legal system and that the bill is necessary to prosecute the man mentioned earlier. A lot of people are worried that if the bill is passed, mainland Chinese officials will pressure Hong Kong into using this law to extradite Hong Kong citizens unjustly, specifically targeting political activists and journalists that oppose the politics of the mainland. So, although mainland authorities are not allowed to operate in Hong Kong, they have in the past abducted Hong Kong citizens illegally for as little as selling books that criticize the mainland. These concerns are not unfounded, as Chinese President Xi has constantly been involved in meddling in Hong Kong internal affairs as well. So that's a lot of where the concerns are coming from. Is a lot of people see this as kind of China trying to take full reign over Hong Kong and basically slowly get rid of their democratic government step by step.
So, like, deep down, this isn't...
You're effectively giving a foreign government a foothold into what is supposed to be sort of an independent city.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So deep down, under all this information, it's not really about the guy that killed his wife?
No.
No, I mean, that's
this is the face of it,
yeah,
right?
It doesn't seem like that's the only reason. Apparently, this bill would be currently targeting, I think they said 37 different suspected criminals. So it's not even that many people, considering there's millions in Hong Kong alone. I think there's like 7 million, or it's a lot. It's really huge.
It's sort of like it's basically like forcing an extradition deal with Hong Kong. Like China's like, no, if somebody committed a crime, we're going to take them and try them over here, as opposed to making a deal.
You got some baby noise back there.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all good.
Daddy.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like a legitimate concern to me. I mean, I get it, but at the same time,
it sounds like more of a prideful thing.
No, I wouldn't say. No, I think that where pride would come in is the protesters,
right?
So I'm going to go a little deeper into this.
Cool.
So even after all of this, Chief Executive Lam was adamant about passing this bill. But eventually the public eye got the best of her as she announced less than a week later that the bill would be suspended, but not entirely withdrawn. The people of Hong Kong were unconvinced by this gesture and went back to the streets to protest. This being the third and largest of protests involving the bill, this time the protesters are asking that the bill be dropped and that Lam step down from her position as chief executive. And they also demanded an investigation into the way the police handled the prior protests, which I don't know if I mentioned, but there was peaceful protest. And you know, it's not really clear who started. So like I think the first protest, it kind of turned into a little bit of a scuffle when night came around, and then also the second protest, same kind of thing. You know, once it hit night, like some people started, and I don't know if it was the protest side or the riot police side, but you know, the police were using like water cannons and pepper spray and stuff,
tear gas as well to disperse the crowd.
That comes a little later though. That's after this. That's actually after this third one is when they started throwing tear gas. But yeah, so but either way, people were, you know, are pissed off that they're acting as if even if the protesters started it, they're acting as if all of the protesters are being violent when, for the most part, the entire day went by. You know, there's nearly a million people in the street, and no one got violent. But we don't know who started the actual violence. It could have been the police. So the protests have continued on a regular basis through the nature, though the nature of them began to escalate from peaceful to violent, with riot police using tear gas and rubber bullets, even against fleeing protesters. Following one of these marches, a band of men in white shirts attacked protest participants on their way home from the event. Using batons, bats, and makeshift weapons, these men attacked people on the streets and in trains indiscriminately. Though unproven, many have accused these men of being hired by officials that support the extradition bill. So this then leads to tension increasing and peaceful demonstrations turning into full-on riots in the streets, with demonstrators throwing eggs and, in some places, throwing bricks and firebombs. Hong Kong officials, including Lam, go on to condemn the actions of the protesters and defend the actions of the police, treating the situation as an anti-terrorism technique. So since then, things have only gotten worse, with Chinese media spinning a narrative that depicts the police as victims of violent terrorists, and the People's Republic of China has recently been sending forces to cities that border Hong Kong and has been seen training military personnel to combat riots. This is worrisome to many, as it appears that this is just another attempt by mainland China to assert dominance over Hong Kong's independent government. So that's all my notes.
Wow.
We got through that.
Oh, you know what? I did have a quick question. So does Hong Kong have its own police force of Hong Kong citizens, or do the Chinese police?
Yes. No. Mainland China has no authority there. They have what they call a what is it? Two states, two government.
Oh, yeah.
Thing. So basically, they have wholly different governments,
but are still like in the same. You know, that's why it's such an interesting. You know.
Yeah. So China. So Hong Kong still answers to China,
but not.
They've just been allowed to have their own
subset of laws, I guess.
Yeah, it's their own laws. I mean, it's like how a state would be here, except for it's more powerful. They have their own constitution. It's not like in the United States we have state laws, but then we have federal laws.
Yeah,
They don't have federal laws that govern Hong Kong.
So they would have like state laws and federal laws, but then the federal from China would look over Hong Kong's federal. Like if we're talking in those words, you know what I mean? Is that how you would take it?
Yeah, so federal here, that would be how it would work. But
Right.
But since they don't have like a federal government there,
Gotcha.
Oh yeah,
That's interesting.
very interesting.
So anywho, what do you guys? What I know David knows probably more than me about this, honestly.
Well, I've been following a lot on like the actions of the protesters themselves, and like the tactics they're taking, because though like it's being portrayed as very violent on pen and paper, it's more so like strategic tactics to avoid the tactics of the police that they're using to disperse, by shining lasers into the police faces so they won't fire anymore, rubber bullets into the crowd, covering their faces in dampened towels so they can combat the tear gas and continue to protest out into the city. And it's showing a strong sense of nationalism throughout that entire nation, and it's why it's so prolonged and it's going on for such a long time. I mean, a good example that a lot of people are referencing with these is the Tiananmen Square massacre. China, even after it was apparent that great political discourse was happening within their society, mainland China still tried to suppress any outward media going out to any other great nations.
And internally they've spun it in a way which was what I was saying, that it's like, oh, the police there are fighting against terrorists, where that's not really the case. It's a protest that got out of hand, and whoever's fault it is, it might be.
Well, main like footnote is those gang of people that came in. A big reason why there's a lot of controversy behind that is when those group of people started to step in with those bamboo sticks, a lot of the authorities at the time fled the scene and didn't show up until those, mercenaries per se, cleared the areas, when the police started to take aim and, assess the injured that were there, And there's still videos, being posted that you can find, on certain sites that China themselves are trying to suppress.
Yeah.
Well, I just know one of the videos I saw was like a small, well, not a small, a group of protesters had singled out what looked like a police officer and were like smacking the shit out of him, and he almost shot him. He pulled a gun out and finally they backed off. But
I saw that one as well. That was the most recent video, wasn't it?
I believe so.
It was a group of protesters who were chasing down a group of cops with batons. And they were beating them, and they were getting surrounded in the streets, and they had to pull out their guns just to disperse the crowd so they wouldn't get attacked anymore.
Wow.
So it's getting to that point where even the police themselves don't know what to do with these large amounts of people, And the government, mainland China themselves, aren't backing down either. So it's been prolonged for so long. And that's a key note of the Chinese people, is that they have such a strong sense of like nationalism that it's very hard for them to back down on their moral standings.
You said for the
well, I think that's sort of part of their political belief, is that that like it's a sign of weakness to back down from anything. That's part of the reason we have the issues with the trade war right now, because they don't when it comes to making a deal from what I understand, the Chinese believe, a deal is something that benefits me, period. It's not about benefiting both parties. I got a good shake on this deal.
And what can I do with it? Yeah. And if they don't see any great, giveaway or takeaway from it, they're not gonna move. They're not gonna budge at all.
So yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
Any other thoughts? I mean, one thing, that's just to take away from this entire thing is like, use this as a good example for other governing countries, or even starting like nations. You can see what the people have to bring to the table when it's, that much of importance, And it just, I don't know. It goes back to a lot of like historical references in regards to the structure of our nation in itself, And so it's quite interesting to see like the development of what this happens. Because technically speaking, historically, like this is their second biggest protests that have happened in retaliation to the Chinese government.
When was the first?
That was in, correct me if I'm wrong, but mid to late 80s, correct? With that whole deal with those students. I believe it was a group of students that would go into Tiananmen Square just to sit down and protest, and then the military started to roll in and actually start opening fire on the groups of people, killing a lot of people. And a keynote to that as well, that they're still trying to do now, is a lot of the media outlets that were trying to, bring this to light because it was a tragedy. China was suppressing and not allowing any news outlets to release that to the public.
Right.
And main thing that is, quoted is the Tiananmen Square massacre. A lot of people were killed by military. Think about that.
Right.
Just because they wanted a change in their, political values or standings.
Yeah. So,
the famous photo of the kid sitting in front of the tank.
The tank ban, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you guys think that that's what this is leading to?
There was posts that China was flying in militia to Hong Kong as kind of like a scare tactic to instill fear in the people, though they were just stationing them there.
So they're actually flying them in?
Mm-hmm. There was signs of like people being dropped in, tanks being rolled in.
Yeah, the last thing I saw was the tanks being positioned on bordering cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, okay. So I'm not up to date within the last few days.
It's more of like a scare tactic, and mainland China's trying to seclude Hong Kong in itself to kind of like better control what's going on in that city.
Right.
Well, who knows? We don't know.
Oh yeah, this is just all speculation.
The riots aren't going to go outside of Hong Kong.
Absolutely not.
So so what it looks like is that eventually, if they're ready, if they're going to do that, eventually they're going to do it, is what it seems like.
Yeah. They're just getting ready.
Well, I'm just curious, is China trying to bring Hong Kong to heel for economic reasons, maybe? Just because since they're, I imagine, feeling some sort of strain because of what's going on with our economy, are they trying to, because I know Hong Kong's a major...
It could be.
Economic strength.
There's probably people out there who have said stuff like that. Realistically, we actually benefit more from China's trades than they do from ours.
Because bottom line, they are a huge industrial nation.
Yeah, and I just heard the other day, I didn't read into it too much, but I did hear that China is retaliating with tariffs as well. So
just recently they stopped buying, produce and goods from the U.S. I remember hearing about that.
Is that what it is?
They had put a tariff that they're no longer going to buy any U.S. produce. And so it was a big impact on the Valley because a lot of our, economy is agricultural. Yeah.
Shit.
So it's a huge thing because all these farmers, they don't know what to do. It was a good sign. It was a good example is when cartels had taken over the avocado industry in Mexico. We started having avocado shortages in the U.S. because most of our imports of avocados is from Mexico.
Yeah. The one thing I think probably the most optimistic way you can kind of look at it is we're constantly focused on like what's going on here, right? And how shitty everything is here. But you can look at almost any other part of the world, and they have similar, if not worse, problems.
Oh, absolutely. Just on a different scale, you could say.
Yeah. So even like, places that we think of as being, not like China, but places we think of as being like really, tame kind of whatever places. Yeah, there's they're having crazy stuff going on there too. And
absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure there's still a lot of...
Would you say it's really a first world problem that we're able to worry about other countries?
I would say that too, because some countries are so focused on just reestablishing themselves that they don't even their citizens probably don't even have time or the access to view other world countries, issues and politicals like unrest.
I was talking to some people from England and New Zealand the other day, and they're like, I asked them if it may seem inappropriate, but these are friends of mine. I was asking them if they actually didn't like America or Americans. They said, it's not that we don't like you. We more worry for you and your well-being. Because we do, after all, we have a lot of, like you said, a lot of focus on what we're doing now.
In Britain.
No, I know. No,
look at Brexit. That's what I'm saying. Look at
that's what.
Look at everywhere else. They can't. The reason that everyone else is worried about us is because we put ourselves center stage constantly. We're
Absolutely.
We're like the one drama kid that like who has to be like the,
I know
the
they
spotlight,
and especially
They're
now
like-
with our enacting president, it's like a show.
They said that they were like, we even wonder about what's going on with the president, but then again, we don't have time. I'm like,
Yeah, it's like
so
you know.
I was like, oh yeah,
Isn't Brexit kind of I know it's different, but you can kind of draw a parallel between Brexit and what's going on with Hong Kong, sort of. Whereas they're trying to
sort of.
Exit the union because they want some autonomy back that was sort of given away by joining the union.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite of what's going on in China in a way, because like Brexit is trying to
break away. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't want to leave don't want to leave the union. A lot of people want to stay in the European Union, and there's also people in Hong Kong that are, very, very. They're very much on the side of the Hong Kong government, which seems like a lot of the government officials do want to pass this bill.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot of people that you would think of as like being nationalists, I guess, So,
absolutely. I mean, a good example is the main actress for the coming Mulan movie. She herself even spoke out in favor of the government, asking the Hong Kong people to stop the protests and to just comply with the government and the laws. And Jackie Chan himself too even said it.
Yeah, and I put a lot of weight on Jackie Chan just because I love Jackie Chan. He's awesome, but I mean, has there been one citizen of China who has been able to say, oh, maybe this isn't a good idea, or maybe we need to look at this a different way? I'm pretty sure.
You mean
you're not
protesting isn't a good idea?
No. I mean, like, as a citizen from China, or someone who is representing sort of a Chinese voice, are you even allowed to decry the Chinese government in any way?
So do you think because of their...
If you're in Hong Kong, absolutely you're allowed to.
Right.
But as I mentioned...
Right, in Hong Kong, but I'm just saying like Jackie Chan, I imagine he has a lot of business from his films and stuff, but him being Chinese, I don't think anybody elevated elevated in the eye of anything over there can really say anything negative about China. I'm pretty sure there's an embargo for anybody who has anything critical to say about China in China.
That's actually a good to bring up, because I've even following that a lot of people who are famous in China themselves, Hong Kong, like rappers and music artists and stuff like that, they are also in speaking in favor of the government, strangely enough. So maybe, they might suffer some type of repercussion.
Hong Kong or China?
Well, and I kind of wonder if like the Chinese government, and this will sort of draw a parallel when we discuss Spiderman later, but it's like, are they, is the government sort of saying, hey, put in a good word for us with the public right now because we are wanting this to go a certain way. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure the Chinese government has people they can reach out to that are in the worldview that,
kind of give them a better backing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a good perspective to look at.
Sorry, I've got my phone out here. I actually, almost 2 hours ago now, we ordered Postmates for Popeye's chicken sandwiches. And it's still getting picked up. I don't know if that girl's even still there, or if she just split and didn't cancel the...
Well, doesn't it follow her location? You could see she's not there anymore.
First world problems.
Oh, yeah, she's still there.
She could just be like, you know what? I'm getting paid for this.
She's like, it's my job.
Oh, maybe she ate it on the way and then had to go back and get more.
She's like, sorry, I got super hungry with all the waiting.
A lot of the food delivery people will take they'll take French fries or whatever.
Isn't Popeye's right there off of Airport?
Yeah.
She's off of Olive in some little side street.
Maybe she's at a different Popeye's.
Depends on where she's coming from.
There's not another Popeye's right there.
She's just home eating the Popeyes.
So we were going to test out the sandwiches on the podcast, but I honestly don't think they're coming.
If they show up, I'd be very surprised. Just ask her. Be like, what's ET of
Sandwiches.
So
I don't know
is
if I
that a
can
wrap
text her.
on China?
Oh, I
Yeah.
can.
I know, I was about to say, so Hong Kong,
I hope for the best. It's kind of it's sort of I don't know when you get into protests and hopefully these stay nonviolent. I mean, it, it's especially since we're that's not the country we're in, and so we
Mhm.
get whatever the news is willing to report. So it's hard for us to really
Give
have
a
a hard
proper
opinion
assessment.
one way or the other. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, I hope just nobody's seriously hurt. Like nobody takes this opportunity to hurt a large amount of people that are congregated in an area.
Well, with that being said, I mean, there's been videos posted of police throwing tear gas from buildings, the rooftops of buildings, and there's been studies have shown that like those are thrown at such a high velocity that if that hits someone, they could die. And you're not even supposed to be throwing tear gas from such a high altitude to begin with, due to the dangers of a fatality. Tear gas is used to disperse crowds and kind of control the people within it, not to.
I was about to say, wouldn't you like be on the ground and kind of roll it?
Yeah,
towards the area?
that's why they throw it at such a low. That's why they
Right.
underhand throw it.
Right,
a large
right.
majority of times, you don't see them overhand throwing it.
No,
because
especially from buildings.
and the gas itself is so dense, whatever lingers from the top is going to drop down. You're not doing anyone any favors, And then there was also that security footage of those two police officers torturing that man who was strapped to a hospital bed. It was an older Chinese gentleman who was strapped to a hospital bed, and you see two police officers coming in and out of frame, pinching his face. There's even some where they're just beating on his genitalia for no reason, and the man can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You see towards the end of the video, he tried, because they keep lifting up his shirt to smack his stomach and pinch his stomach. He, towards the end, he starts trying to, try to fight the cops back. That's another video that was leaked to the public, and it caused more just outcry with the society themselves, Like, what is this? Why are the cops doing this supposedly under the blanket? What else are
Right.
they doing to the citizens that isn't being documented in themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that just ties in line with what you said, Josh. Like, there's so much going on under the covers that we don't really know what is actually happening and what's the main issue for these protests.
And why don't, and if the people, it's a democracy, right? If you see the people don't want you to pass a bill, why not
Drop
consider
it.
that? Yeah. Why not just withdraw it completely? Why say we're just suspending it until further notice, basically?
Mm-hmm.
And they've said indefinitely. But
Here's the other thing that they're getting that I think is keeping this bill sort of up in the air is that I don't know what Hong Kong's let's say immigration policy is as far as who they allow in and out
Right.
to live in Hong Kong, but they have a large amount of people from mainland China now. They have large areas of people from China. That's where a lot of the support for the Chinese mainland comes from. Is that now all of these people that are from China that have moved to Hong Kong and work and live there now, they're like, well, this is a democracy, so now we want to speak up, and they're in support of mainland Chinese ideals.
yeah, I wonder what it's like the laws to immigrate into Hong Kong from
China.
Taiwan or any
Or
of the
from
other
other-
any of the other. Do they each have their own like laws between every different state, or is that even a thing that happens? I'm assuming you can probably immigrate to Hong Kong. Yeah, like
That would make sense. I mean, that would fall in line with like the democratic structure
Mhm.
of their system, because you'd have to, at least in some aspects, have that enacting if you want to immigrate and become a citizen of Hong Kong itself.
yeah.
Yeah,
or citizenship more specifically than just immigration, but
Yeah.
Right.
actually gaining citizenship, right?
Yeah, we don't even really know how does their sort of democracy work even. I mean, do they have voter ID in Hong Kong?
I mean, since it was a colony of Britain, it probably is pretty similar to Britain or our democracies. It's probably pretty standard, I would think. But it's been, I don't know even how long it's been since then, but it's been, a long time.
It's been about 11 to 12 days of just nonstop protests.
No, I'm talking about since
since
they became part of China again instead of just a
not yeah okay I get what you're saying. Yeah,
since Britain let them go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's crazy to see too that a lot of these protesters are young students.
Mhm.
And that was another main thing to take away from the last protests back in the 80s.
Mhm.
They were students, scholars per se. So that tells you that these protesters aren't just ignorant people who are just going off of what they're being fed by the media outlets, but rather they're well-educated groups of people that are genuinely standing for something that they believe in is either right or just, they feel like is being taken away from them.
And there's
Right.
people in the government that are also defending the protesters.
Mhm.
And there's
Mhm.
also, like a lot of like lawyers and what have you that are participating in the protests because, it's pretty apparent on what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And it's pretty apparent too that there may be something more going on with this bill than what China is allowing us to hear. Because it's already been shown in the past that China does withhold information if they see that it will not put them in a great light, especially with the UN.
Yeah.
Good examples when they were coming under fire for, taking out that group of Muslims and putting them in re-education camps,
I didn't even hear about that.
You didn't hear about that? That
No.
happened. The UN was putting China under fire for violating human rights laws because they were taking minority groups of Muslim people in mainland China and moving them to
Camps.
what China is saying, are calling re-education camps. And their reasoning is, we just want to re-educate these groups of people on China's laws and values so they don't cause any political unrest.
But really, it
So
was
what are
more
these
like
Are these internment camps?
Yeah,
Are
so satellite views, from what I've seen, is they've been taking satellite pictures of China from the beginning of 2000s, from the beginning, and you could see they start clearing land all of a sudden. 2008, you start seeing these rectangular buildings start being put up further away from China, and the more they're being developed, the more from satellite you can see they're being prisons. They kind of look like prisons and or camps, holding facilities, more I should say.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden, groups of Muslim people within mainland China itself started
Be going
disappearing.
there. Mhm.
The cops were coming to their houses and taking their families, and taking them to these places for, and I quote, re-education purposes, when in reality they're recruiting these groups of Muslims because they go against the traditions and values of the Chinese people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So that's a whole different topic.
That's
there,
a whole
but-
nother just like layer to peel back there.
Yeah,
I mean,
so we
it's-
can kind of move on a little bit. Does anyone have any last thoughts on the protests, or what do you guys think? Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? Is it kind of a black or gray situation, or is it?
There's definitely a
I
gray
I think
area.
it's gray.
There's
I think
definitely
it's
a
more.
gray.
Personally, it sounds like. I mean, I'm very new at this subject in general, which is why I was kind of quiet and just kind of listening. But it seems to me, me personally, I would probably be leaning more towards the Hong Kong side.
Absolutely.
But I think that becomes from a standpoint of freedom, almost. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
To be able to decide certain things on their own, and like you said earlier, David, it's kind of a taking away from them kind of action. So that's
Feels like
interesting.
they want to feel like they still have a grasp and
Right.
control over what laws are being passed.
I mean, it's kind of like an adult being in charge of their own household.
Absolutely.
If another adult charged into your home and you're like,
they're like, no way, Jose.
"Excuse me, can you get the hell out of my house, please? This is my house. I treat my house well. This is my home. I want to protect
Mhm.
it, And I think that's kind of what's going down. But there probably is a lot more gray areas in it too that we just
Absolutely.
haven't seen yet.
No.
Yeah, I'd probably say I'm almost 100% on the side of not passing this bill at the very
Mhm.
least. But yeah, I'm sure that maybe I'm sure that there's probably I'm absolutely sure that there's been times where the protesters because they're actually inciting violence
Mhm.
have started the conflict going on
Right.
in certain scenarios, but I don't know who
who started what
first.
who did
Yeah,
who
yeah.
Absolutely.
But
I mean,
who did who wrong.
I guess you could say like the main big protest win would be when I think the first early few days of the Chinese protests, they had bombarded and gotten into their congressional office, you know. And there's a good picture. It's honestly one of my favorite pictures from the protest. You see all the citizens standing around the chairs and stuff, and you see, you know, the UN sign above that congressional room, and around it you just see graffiti all over, and the protesters standing there, you know. And the main question is like, what's going to happen? Is the government just going to wait out until the protesters themselves and the people themselves get tired and it stops, or is it just going to go on until the government acts aggressively, violently, or either or sides just act to the point where it's like, okay, this is getting out of hand. People are dying. You know,
I think-
guns are being fired.
Are we gonna step in? Is the United States gonna step in?
I was just
Should
going to
the-
ask.
yeah,
you
should
guys
the
think
United
US
States
is gonna
step in? You know, like
you jumped up way high
So-
in volume there, Josh. Sorry. When we heard it.
Well, I think that's hard to say too. Like it's a 50-50 because you don't want to wait until something aggressive happens. You know what I mean? A huge stance of violence is really forthcoming and easy for these types of
And that's a
situations
big
to just
worry
kind of blow up, right?
of these
And
protesters.
you don't want to be too late, but at the same time, you don't want to overstep on accident. So
Mhm.
I think that's a 50-50
So-
split for the U.S.
Josh, do you have any last thoughts on this?
Now he's just gone. No I'm kidding.
I think
No, I'm here, and that was part of where I was going to go with it. Was you know, I kind of wonder if they're going to try to hold out to a point where they can try to get the U.S. involved, because obviously that was part of what the protesters were doing, as well as, you know, running around waving American flags, you know,
Right.
obviously showing that they support democracy. I think they're trying to kind of signal that
A signal.
they need some help from somebody, because I think they realize, you know, all of mainland China against Hong Kong, they're screwed. So
I mean, of course, in other countries, you want to try to let other countries try to handle it themselves. But at the same time, if there's a clear stance on, hey, we need help, we're literally flagging your flags, you know,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
could be
that's kind of,
that
and then
they're
you
just-
don't want to overstep China. But
Yeah,
China
exactly.
already pulled their support in our
and
agriculture anyway. So no kidding.
well, we're already on rough ground with them just because of our
Right.
current economic
Yeah.
health.
right,
Mhm.
right. That's
Oh,
why
yeah.
I'm saying
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
such a yeah.
And
But I
that's
think
why,
that's-
like, if the U.S. were to step in, I mean, that's going to affect, you know, all of the U.S. because how's China going to respond to us taking in favor of just one city in that entire nation? You know?
Yeah.
all right. So let's move on though. We've been going at this topic for over 40 minutes. So Josh, you want to go ahead and intro the Jeff Epstein
Topic
situation?
2.
Oh, man. That guy.
This guy. Oh no.
So this creepy pedo dude who had an airplane with underage ladies and also an island got
a great
arrested
start.
and was going to be prosecuted for it. And then he tried to kill himself once, and he didn't succeed. And then very shortly after he got off of suicide watch, he possibly succeeded.
Possibly.
Or, I mean,
Possibly.
depending on how you look at it.
And so
Right.
and so he was a financier, right? Like he
Mm-hmm.
No one knows for sure. That's the weirdest part about this guy. No
Well,
one
they
knows
know
where
that he
all
was-
this guy's money came from.
yeah, we don't know, they don't know where his
Well-
money came from, but they know that he's like investor kind
Right.
of deal, right?
A vague,
he's
a
tied
very
with a
vague
lot of-
title.
That's his
Like,
prof-
Yeah,
his profession.
I'm an investor. Every time I buy fast food, I'm investing. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think anybody knows really.
yeah.
I mean, for all we know, most of his money was black.
That's true.
I honestly wouldn't.
He could have been setting up other creepy rich guys who are going and partaking of all of the situations.
That could have been
set up,
possibly
and then,
another.
black.
But that was another big thing about this whole thing is that they wanted to kind of get more names and see who he was tied
Which
to
is
more.
which is why I think also could be tied onto another reason why he would try to commit suicide in the first place.
Save some
No,
skin.
no, no. That's another reason he wouldn't commit suicide, because guys like that, especially narcissists, they will roll in a heartbeat. Anything to get their rear end out of the fire. He would have rolled on everybody, anybody and everybody. He would have cut a deal. I mean, he was able to cut that sweet deal last time. The first time he was going to get busted for it, and he basically
Right.
got a slap on the wrist.
Right.
True. Yeah. That's true.
He would have rolled on so many people just to get his butt out of the fire.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
Unless
that goes into
the only reason I would think that he would be like, if he knew that the authorities were already going to get all the information and there wasn't anything unique he could give them, then I could see him committing suicide. But I think
like if he didn't have
so much information this guy. Well, no, I'm just thinking, like, I'm sure he had tons of dirt and information on everybody who's gone here and there, but I think if the authorities could have already confiscated that information, or they had enough that they could act on it without cutting him a deal, and there was no way he was going to get a deal,
that's when he would commit suicide.
Then maybe, I could possibly see him killing himself. Because I think if he knew that if he was going to do hard time, that the type of crime that he was going to be convicted for, he would not survive long.
Bad things would happen to him in prison.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
yes,
it's a bottom line.
So then, Josh, what is your stance on the belief of suicide versus non-suicide? Suicide versus homicide?
Okay, I don't know if you can pull this up, Tony, but I mean, the circumstances of his death are unfortunately, as of right now, sort of questionable. There were, he was off a suicide watch, but from what I understand, the guards were supposed to be checking on him every 15 to 20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah.
And for whatever reason, two guards who were on patrol that night both fell asleep and left him alone for 2 or 3 hours. And the camera that was supposed to be on him for whatever reason was not working. So we didn't actually, there's no video evidence.
Yeah, there's too much coincidence.
Right.
Like there's too much coincidental actions leading up to his death that it's hard to not say.
That's how these things work, though. Yeah. Right, exactly.
It's like.
So it's hard to say what really happened,
What do you want me to pull up here, Josh?
Just the details of the guard duty, like what was supposed to be in place to make sure that it didn't happen. I'm pretty sure they were supposed to check on him every 20 minutes.
They were supposed to check on him.
I'm pretty sure that he was also under camera.
Yes.
He had to have been, right? Especially because he's such a high-profile suspect.
But they were supposed to check on him every 20 minutes. Working. And
all of this, I mean, see, that's where the gray area starts.
Did they have footage at all and just miss those couple hours? Or do they not have any footage at all?
We don't know the exact details of that yet. I don't think that.
Right.
I believe they are investigating it, and that hasn't been put out to the public yet. We don't know if it's like, oh yeah, that camera, it's been acting up for the last month. We have a service call on it, but they just hadn't come out to fix it yet. But that being said, then maybe you make sure your guards can stay awake and actually check.
Or maybe just
exactly,
take
or
that
like why
off
couldn't
and
they
replace the security footage camera?
I mean, my thing is like, let's say so like speculation. Let's say he was murdered, right? What kind of person would we'll start planning this out. Who was he tied to?
Okay, let's first talk about how. What'd you say? What did he say?
I don't know.
I coughed and said Clinton's.
Okay, that's where I was going. Okay,
I'm sure Bill had plenty of trips to the island.
Okay, so how was the suicide again? Was it a gunshot?
It was a hanging.
A hanging. What happened?
He hung himself.
He hung himself.
Got it. Gun in prison,
the other sort of questionable part about him hanging himself is that I believe it's called the hyoid bone, or it's a bone in your neck that you have to put quite a bit of force on in order to actually break. And given the circumstances, it's sort of questionable that he would have been able to break this bone in his neck. And I believe it's reported that bone did break in his neck. So usually that's indicative of like someone strangling you.
Right.
Like.
Where'd he go?
So do you think maybe he was strangled and then put up to hang? But I mean, like, even if he was strangled, you would see bruise marks. You'd see signs of struggling.
Right.
They removed the cellmate. The cellmate was I believe a former police officer who was under charges for something else.
Did they state the reasoning for moving him?
I do not remember. I just know that they had removed him, and so now. At the time of death, he was in that cell by himself. Like, a lot of the things that could have either stopped it or prevented it or checked or, where we'd have some sort of record of exactly what happened, all of these things just sort of perfectly disappeared. No guards. The camera wasn't working. He didn't have a cellmate in there with him.
It's just too
It
coincidental.
almost seems too perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, like, we're just going to fall asleep all of a sudden. And as soon as they fall asleep, cameras stopped working, guards moved out. His cellmates moved out. You're exactly right. So, I mean, it's too perfect that it seems like it was just pre-planned.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, I don't like to jump to any conclusion. So, sadly, if it is something, that we're going to be left in the dark about, we're going to be left in the dark either way. Like, what's
Are you going to be devil's advocate, Occam's razor guy over here?
Sounds like it.
I guess I don't know. I all I'm saying is,
are you familiar with Occam's razor?
Yeah.
The simplest explanation.
Wait, why? What are you saying, Tony?
What am I saying?
Yeah, why is he saying that?
I'm just saying, if we're going to be left in the dark, there's not really anything else we can do about it. Like, if it is this huge conspiracy,
I mean, that's true. Yeah,
the Clintons and Trump and whoever else, these really big
political figures.
Yeah, there's other. What are the other names that? Like, there's a lot.
Prince Andrew from the UK.
Yeah,
they actually.
So
what's intriguing about that
are involved in it in some way, then we're never gonna actually.
I was about to say it's like playing
find
Clue,
out, right? Like,
yeah.
Sorry.
That's what.
No, you're fine. I'm not doing that. This.
I don't know.
I think it is. I don't know. It's interesting though, because even the cellmate, he I can't remember, but he like put a comment out there to a newser or something about how he wants to move prisons because he was under constant threats of not to talk about anything about what happened. I don't remember.
Who do you think maybe he was receiving?
Yeah, I heard something about how. I heard something
and it was
about
the guards saying not to talk.
No, I heard something about how the guards. What was? I don't want to get this wrong. Something about the guards were told not. Oh, something like that. I don't know. I can't remember what exactly.
Yeah,
it was,
no, I think the guards were told to not to talk, that it would cause too much issues and stuff. But then also the ex-cop that was, I'm sorry, Mike. The ex-cop who was his cellmate has been told not to talk, but in a more threatening type of way.
So there is an FBI investigation going on, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Yes.
Huge investigation.
Huge investigation is so big.
There's definitely a probe into the situation, because now there's of course the moral outcry of all of the victims at this point. I mean, it's a little more difficult for them to get closure to the crimes committed against them because
he's dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think right before he died, like he redrew up his will. I think what was it, in the weeks leading up to him successfully, supposedly killing himself. And so now it's like, if they're going to try to come after, if the victims want to try to come after any of his assets, now there's also the whole legal rigmarole of executing. They still have to execute the will in some respect before anybody can try to get any sort of civil compensation.
Yeah. And leaving us with a shit show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if that was his final FU, I mean, I guess
it's a good one.
Credit for that.
And so one other thing I wanted to ask was earlier before we went live, you guys were mentioning how people had said that he was a narcissist, and that some psychology study or something you read that narcissists don't commit suicide.
Right.
Yeah, they think so highly of themselves that
you have a link to that.
I
study.
don't. I actually heard it. I heard it on another conversation of also intelligence.
And I mean, and it sounds
That's why
It
I know
sounds
I don't commit
accurate.
suicide.
It sounds right, but also
I'm joking.
he tried to commit suicide earlier, didn't he?
Mhm.
Right.
Which is why he was initially put on suicide watch.
Yeah.
So he did try to commit suicide before.
Already.
So they're already
So
intense.
I think that
what were
throws-
what were the circumstances of the first suicide though?
What do you
Or
mean?
the first suicide attempt, I mean, I should say.
I think
don't
that
know.
was more of a
Well,
mental
he
state
failed,
well-being though, and that's why
like-
this is such a 50-50 split too, because he's already had history of not liking himself. So I think the first time was more of a mental state issue kind of thing, and then
So why would the second one not be? But Josh is saying is that we don't know. What are you saying, that it could have been a
Well,
murder attempt?
have you guys? I haven't seen it personally, but have you seen the full details of what happened
No,
first time he tried to commit suicide, like the unsuccessful?
I know very little about this topic. I know a little bit of what I've heard off of the Philip DeFranco show, and then off of the H3 podcast. That's pretty. Oh, and then off of Joe Rogan. Other than that, but they all kind of said the same things, and I mean, I've heard more about it just sitting here talking to you guys about it. I mean, not a lot more, but I've gained a little more information about it than just that. But, yeah, I just was wondering. I mean, do they know? Does anyone know what the circumstances around the first suicide attempt were?
I don't.
first
I didn't.
possible suicide
I mean,
attempt.
if it was never questioned the first time, then why is it? I don't know. Why is it such a big deal this time?
I think now
It
because
says-
Because
he
he
was
actually
put
died?
under watch. I don't think it's because he actually died. I think it's more so just because, like, okay, so they knew he was going to commit suicide, so they took all these precautions to avoid that, and yet he still happened to succeed in doing so. And then, of course, the obvious context following up to that.
See, I don't
Okay,
see
so-
how, because what
Josh.
was it, like a yes.
Sorry, I looked up this article, and it says first possible suicide attempt. Epstein was found nearly unconscious in his jail cell with injuries to his neck. Law enforcement sources told the New York Post at the time it was unclear whether the injuries were self-inflicted, either as a result of a legitimate suicide attempt or a cry for help, or if Epstein had been assaulted by another inmate. Those officials reportedly believe the incident to be a suicide attempt. They cannot rule out upon a potential attack.
See, so we don't know that for sure, and two, hello, obviously this guy was kind of a sexual deviant. I mean, how do we know he wasn't just trying to crank one out?
Not
That's
only
true.
that, it
That's
also
true, yeah.
says that he was not transferred to a hospital either. They kept him in the prison cell.
Do you think that pedophilia and asphyxiation, what's it called?
Oh, are
Do
you
you
talking
think
about the
that
choking thing?
Autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah, there you go.
Autoerotic asphyxiation.
That is known for people to die that way.
Is that okay? But do you think those are related at all? Because you said sexual deviant, but I mean that can mean so many different things. Do you think that there's anything that correlates the two? Really? Because I
Well,
feel like
here's the thing. Okay, so
Usually when you
think
see people
about-
die from that, their pants are down.
Yeah.
No.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, think of how long this guy had been doing this kind of stuff, right? And I don't know if you've ever heard anything about like porn addiction or stuff, but eventually, if you see so much stuff or you do so much, it ends up taking a lot, like using drugs, like any sort of really hard drugs. It takes more and more to end up getting the same result. So it's the same kind of thing could happen with his sexual appetite, I would believe.
It just goes further and further. Like he just gets more
I
and more demented.
wouldn't say that from a position of expertise, but I would say that
That's what
anecdotally it would seem.
That's what I was about to say. Is I wouldn't know,
Right.
but it sounds like Josh does.
Trying to tell us something.
Well, I mean,
No,
if that
but-
would be more of the case, it would make sense that he would be a narcissist. He just
Wanted to crank one out, and it just went bad.
Yeah. But usually you find them that way.
We have a viewer that wants to ask an important question.
Okay.
So let's see. What's your question? And if it is important, then I will read it off. But yeah, other than that, do you guys have any final thoughts on this topic?
I mean,
I think he was killed.
Like bottom line, there's just too many gray areas for us to put a definite pin on whether it was a definite suicide or not. And the baseline to take away is that he's dead. And so what now? Yeah. Well, how can we further this? How can, they further this investigation now that he's deceased?
I mean, and there's also the possibility, and maybe this sounds more like a horror film or an action-packed film. What if it was more of an attempt to kill himself because he knew someone was going to try to kill him anyway?
So you think maybe...
Like,
okay,
so
let's say
did
he
it first
rats
before
out
someone else
people,
could do it, right?
All right, gets a little bit less lenient
and I know that's
of like
kind
a charge,
of
right?
Digging into more of the,
but that is a case. I mean, like he's out. Let's say he's out, right? And he screwed over X amount of people to get himself to that position.
And he was going to get dead anyway.
And
he
he's
was
still
in prison
tied to these people. What are the repercussions following afterwards? Are those?
And is it possible that he attempted? Maybe it was a quote unquote attempted suicide, and then maybe he knew he would be put on suicide watch, and that's why he did it, was because he was going to be watched and no one could have
either way just get it over
killed
with type
him,
deal.
Or well, because I mean, I don't know.
Now let's say
this is just going off of like a bunch of
final thoughts.
Okay, final thoughts. Jeffrey Epstein's dead, and
he's dead.
He hung himself with Bill Clinton's help. Bill Clinton was patting him on the back.
Obviously, we weren't ever saying that, like, personally.
No, he did. Disclaimer: the Clintons did not kill Jeffrey Epstein, but it's funny to talk about. Yeah.
Personally, so what are your final thoughts? You started saying it,
funny
and
to
then
talk about,
and then you started asking a bunch of questions. Like you just started rapid firing questions.
You're like,
yeah, sorry, because I have a lot of questions about.
No, I know.
I did not know enough about Hong Kong, but I am super curious about this one. But no, yeah, I think he was killed. That's my final thought. But I don't know enough to be able to do that kind of thing.
You think he was murdered? I mean, he was killed. We know that.
Because wasn't the ceiling super high up too?
But not only that, how many police officers and investigators and just detectives and all this kind of mess would be able to find that kind of thing out? And we don't know.
Okay, you guys are doing that again.
Sorry. I'm just saying that it looks very suspicious for no reason.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, I will agree. It looks very suspicious. My personal takeaway from this is we're probably never gonna
get those sandwiches.
I mean, I'm not gonna jump and say it was. It looked suspicious. It does for sure, and I think that the logs being falsified is probably pretty much going to be the end of it. Like that's probably where. And that's probably what the end result of the investigation is going to say. And it's just going to be left as a suisaide. And
it's going to be an open case file.
I don't think we'll ever really know. I think that, I don't want to jump and say it was a murder.
It's gonna become episodes of Cold Case.
Yeah, and in regards to the victims, like the only real logical coming to for them would just be give him X amount of money from his per se wealth and be like, right.
And then
sorry.
just lastly to address my last little thought on the bones in his neck being broken, like I don't think any of us here are medical professionals.
Absolutely not.
And I don't think any of us know whether or not that information is true. And I think that
for what
Josh brought up earlier, but if anyone,
I would like to say on that point, I'm a massage therapist and I massage necks all the time. It is very hard to break one of those kinds of bones. But anyway, not the point. Keep going. Continue.
Okay.
As a massage therapist, you've been trying to break bones of people.
That's what I was.
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
Can't do it this time.
Well, no, I'm just saying I can apply a lot of pressure on said area.
So
right.
I guess she's saying
it gives
an idea of how much pressure needs to be applied.
Do you think
per
he
se?
could have done it himself? He might have been really strong.
I don't think mentally his brain would have let him get to that point. Like, when...
Yeah, with that being said, like...
Unless he really was on...
tie the
suicidal, I guess. I don't know.
All right, let's get
because
Josh's.
the idea to, actually do it eventually, like,
well, the
it's
idea is
almost
that he tied the belt
Right.
or rope to something else and
Over.
he like dropped off his bed, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Something like that.
Mhm.
Anyway, let's get Josh's last thoughts on this,
Go ahead, Josh.
and
Sorry.
let's move on
So-
to the last topic.
So my final thoughts is, yes, he deserved to die, and I hope he burns in hell.
Okay,
Agreed.
Yeah, definitely.
We're all laughing.
He did deserve to die. If he was disgusting. So,
Next topic.
yeah, let's move on to the next topic. Who wants to do?
Spider-Man.
How about that Spider-Man
that
action,
young
y'all?
Spooderman?
Who has all the deets?
Like
on-
Tobey Maguire Spider-Man? Or
No, Tom Holland Spider-Man.
You know what? Join
So-
this century, Josh.
All right, so who?
Well,
who,
it's the same century, huh?
who wants to,
Join this
he's-
generation.
I'm just saying, he wasn't amazing, okay? There was only one amazing.
Actually, the last Spider-Mans were not this decade. My bad. Anyway, who wants to give us the little lowdown? Probably everyone watching probably knows, but
Right, I
who
know,
wants
I was
to give
about
us
to say.
the brief
Okay.
description?
Sony and Disney are fighting.
Yes.
Our parents are fighting.
Doesn't, if I'm correct, because I'm still new to this as well, but doesn't Disney want to, or isn't Disney asking for like a more portion? Or like
Disney
wants-
asked for like 95%.
That's right. Of
Mhm.
like all profits from the Spider-Man
And
films.
offered Sony 5%.
That's
And
right.
then
That's
Sony
right.
said
And Sony's
no,
like, nah,
right?
because hasn't Sony owned Spider-Man for
This
quite
entire
some
time.
Yeah.
Right. Basically.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked.
And then Disney came back, I believe, with 50-50 split.
And it's supposedly that they like reached some sort of like deal per se.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, so
Disney came around. He was kind of like
I'm gonna.
they were kind of like,
I'll be right
dude,
back.
just listen.
Hey, could you give me a
We're owning everything already. You should just kind of give up Spider-Man so we can take him under our wing, because officially we've made him a lot better.
Think of like Disney adopting all of your family members and you're left with like one son, and then Disney's like, hey, we'll give you $10 for that kid. And you're like, well,
And
I've
he's
had this
like,
kid for like
"No.
10 years. And they're like,
This is my only kid now. You've taken everything from us.
$10 though. I'll take that one too though. You want that one? Do you want the heart?
Yes.
Yeah, take that one. I brought it, but I don't think I'm gonna drink it. So
Okay. Sorry, I'm getting everyone drinks.
Woohoo! I have a drink.
So,
ASMR.
ASMR opening cans.
you guys like that?
Yeah.
I love this sound.
I like
Can we get
those
like,
kinds of
can we get
sounds
like a
too,
soda
yes.
sponsor, and before we start the ad roll, we just
We should do the whole
have like a sound bite.
like those Coke commercials where you open it and then you go and then
Yeah,
and then that's it.
it's like, have the refreshing taste of soda.
More flavor, I'm telling you.
Soda.
What's that, Josh?
Said more flavor, I'm telling you. You gotta keep your mouth open.
Yeah.
Also, do we still have that
Little-
question?
For the people that are watching, Josh
we-
is on this thing
We
because
never got the question.
Okay.
Yeah, he asked if he could ask the question. And he didn't ever ask a question. So
maybe that was about the first topic. And we
if he
just didn't
does,
see it.
no, I think it was during the.
Maybe the
Joking
question
Act.
was,
Okay.
can he ask a question?
I saw it pop up. Yeah, that.
And then he's like, I did it.
Oh, maybe. Well, then why would you ask, you dick?
Whoa! Whoa!
Don't even ask. Just ask.
Well, either way, you could still ask the question.
You can always just ask a question.
Okay, so
Many questions.
so yeah, what was the exact deal? Does anyone know that?
Just to own him, right? Own Spider-Man and to be able to.
No, I don't think they were talking about rights. I think it was they were negotiating the price for the whatever the next feature would be.
Yeah.
Oh, I was about to say I couldn't
That's
remember if it was to
how
own
much-
him or
how much-
about the next film.
It was
right.
Yeah.
It was. I think it was Disney trying to license for the next movie, like try to license Sony's right.
They were trying to get a bigger cut, is what I understand, because I guess Disney is getting barely anything off the
Right.
Spider-Man movies.
Because a couple
But don't
of
they
the
have all the MCU universe besides Spider-Man anyways?
Well, yeah, and yeah, they do. But so what?
but people at MC are expensive.
Well, the people
See,
also.
here's the thing though, is that Sony is actually doing some good stuff with Spider-Man, like as far as the last Spider-Man video game. that animated Spider-Man movie was really
And not to mention, they did work with Disney to get a Spider-Man movie, get Spider-Man into the MCU in the first place. They didn't have to do that.
Right.
It's true.
They just thought it made sense as far as...
And I think that...
Yeah, they squashed out Spider-Man into, 4 movies, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two explicitly Spider-Man-centric ones, and then...
so the first one was Spider-Man Homecoming, right? And then they had Civil
Far
War.
From Home. Oh, yeah.
Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Then...
Far From Home.
Endgame.
Oh, yeah, okay, so you're writing the
No,
Avengers.
yeah, all of them.
We're talking about all the movies he
5,
was in.
right?
No, he wasn't in... He wasn't in...
he was in 4 total then, yeah. So Homecoming, like you said.
Yeah.
And then the Civil War.
He
And
wasn't in Infinity War.
Oh, he wasn't?
he was
he
in the
wasn't.
last one.
He was in Endgame.
Yeah.
So,
'Cause he-
and then Far From Home. So they did work with
He
them on
wasn't
4
in Infinity
movies.
War?
Mm-mm.
And I think that
'Cause-
to Disney's credit,
If you're looking at the placement, not to cut you off, sorry.
that's
But
okay.
If you look at the placement, it's
Oh,
Far From
okay,
Home,
you're still
or
going
Home,
to.
because she's confused about the chronological timeline of where his placement is in regards to Endgame and why he's showing up in Endgame and not Infinity War.
Wait,
Well,
so
no,
you're
he
telling me
was-
in the actual movie, was he in Infinity War?
But Civil War happened way before. Okay, we don't need to go into
I think he made an
That's
appearance in
the
Infinity
point.
War.
Trying to help
at the
Ty
end,
here,
right?
Right?
When everybody came.
Tight.
Well, he would have been
That-
done right now if
that's
you
not-
just let him say it.
No, that's so much. That's so much explanation. He was wrong. So, let's not go into that because that's not even part of the topic.
I just
Okay,
want to
I
say
know
that
you
we
did-
made the conclusion earlier that Tony was a narcissist
You
because
don't
he
need
would
to-
never kill himself.
Conclusion for today's
I
podcast:
will
Tony
fucking
Tony's
is
a
kill
narcissist.
myself. You guys- well, I will prove you all wrong. I'm gonna kill myself.
I'm gonna kill myself right now. I'm gonna break that bone in my neck.
Put me on suicide.
I'll prove to you how easy it is to break that.
We'll just fall asleep.
Anyway,
You guys better not
Spider-Man.
fall asleep.
We'll try our best.
you guys had better not fall asleep because I would kill myself.
I want you guys to see it. Okay, so Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
So, no, yeah, but you don't need to know the chronological order.
I'm
of the
just
movies.
asking. So he wasn't in
He was not
Infinity
in
War.
No.
Infinity War.
Okay,
He
that's
was in,
weird.
He was in 4 movies, which I think is pretty gracious of Sony.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like, well, they were doing it for the money. Let's be real,
Absolutely,
first and
right?
foremost, but also
But that's such
somewhat for the fans. Like,
I was about to say that's such a great way to do it, though.
yeah, but I think they were saying that these MCU movies are making fucking way more than any of our
Mhm.
Spider-Man,
Absolutely.
any of their movies
Think
ever
about it.
made.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, for
Spider-Man
sure.
has finally caught enough fire to sustain itself with Sony, so Sony,
Mhm.
of course, is going to want to take advantage of that.
I
Yeah.
want to actually find out if Sony Entertainment has made a single movie than the lowest grossing MCU movie.
It is quite interesting.
I
mean,
honestly,
I doubt
maybe
I highly doubt it.
one. No I'm kidding. I don't know.
I'm not talking any Marvel movie. It's just
just in
MCU.
general, like
Yeah,
a basic
Right.
MCU movie.
Yeah. But also, didn't the MCU start before Disney acquired?
Yes.
Yeah, because Iron Man, up to Iron Man 3 was already out.
I was about to say
1
already
wa-
like 70%.
Iron Man
right?
1 was
No.
independently...
Maybe like 60%.
It's probably
though,
around
right?
50%.
Well, yeah, wasn't the first Iron Man
Nah.
independently funded?
Yeah.
They didn't have like Disney
They didn't. It wasn't.
or Sony didn't have the rights to either.
It
That
was
was
Marvel.
that was
Mhm.
like an independently funded film, and then it wasn't until those films got traction that Disney was like, "Hey,
Hey, let me.
You want a
Let me
contract?
get in on that, buddy. Cal,
Let me take some of that
this whole
money."
time.
got all those cookies there. Need help eating them?
We're talking a lot of shit about Disney.
Okay, we
Well,
get it.
Disney
I mean,
deserves
it's
it.
not. Yeah,
Disney deserves it. Honestly,
Disney's
like,
being a little
Disney's making
narcissistic bitch. No, I'm
Too much
kidding.
money. I wouldn't be
Well-
surprised if Disney tries buying out Six Flags.
I wouldn't be
Same.
surprised if Disneyland tried to kill himself. No, I'm sorry.
well, okay, well, who owns Six Flags? It's Time Warner.
Time Warner.
Yeah, Time Warner.
Does Disney own them yet or no?
No.
No. Okay. that's
Yet,
fine.
don't jinx him.
Not
Okay,
yet.
well, they will eventually if everyone keeps letting
Just imagine
them
a
buy everything. They
dystopian-
bought Fox.
a dystopian
See,
society.
but okay,
where
that was
Disney
Fox though.
has
I feel
bought out
like
everything.
Fox is enormous.
I think no,
Fox
that's
is-
not what I mean. I think
Fox is
Time
huge.
Warner deserves to be Time Warner by themselves.
But you don't think Fox deserves? So you want Disney?
Not
Simpsons?
anymore.
Disney Simpson.
Fox was.
I mean, think about it.
A huge.
Was.
They still are.
I mean, they're huge, but now it's just kind of like
they're only going to get bigger because they
Disney
probably have bigger funding now.
But I feel like Fox started losing some of their steam.
Oh, Fox Sports, Fox News.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I
totally forgot about the news.
At least we know Disney is nonpartisan.
Let's say Disney buys out the government. And we
that-
have
I
a
would-
government
I would vote
system
for that.
ran
No, I'm
by
kidding.
Disney. And we have
Disney
all these
already-
like...
Just
they
Mickey's
start,
running around.
Yeah, they start like building like towns, right?
Handing
But it all
out,
looks like Toontown. So then like the U.S. looks like
Disney already
Toontown.
bought out the government.
Don't you know?
Josh, any thoughts?
Well, they already they keep basically rewriting copyright law, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or hasn't
What does that say?
Mickey Mouse supposed to hit public domain like a bunch of times already, and they keep extending.
Yeah.
So real quick, MDS234 says to David, "Hi, sweetie, I love you."
Ah,
I just wanted to point that
cute.
out.
hey, babe.
Wait, how do you know that's? Do you know that's her screen name for sure?
Yeah, not for sure, but she said she's watching. So
What if it's someone else?
hello, someone else.
Do you love them?
No, you're still like, hey,
I love
babe.
everyone.
David's still like, hey,
I
babe.
love all my
so,
fans.
So the controversy over this
Oh, my
topic
God.
is: should Sony be fighting for as much as possible, or should they sort of succumb to Disney in that Disney is making Spider-Man more popular?
Also, do you think there's a fans versus reality or what? Just fans versus finances
Right.
kind of thing going on?
Mm-hmm. It's
Or-
a popularity contest.
Or fans versus altruism. I don't know if it's altruism. What would you call it? The right thing. Because I feel like Sony, personally, I feel like Sony's more in the right here. But I think that the fans just want Spider-Man to be in the new Avengers.
Right.
Yes. But I mean,
Unfortunately, I don't care enough about that. Only because I think
Josh, get
I
out
read
of
a
here.
lot of amazing. I read a lot of amazing Spider-Man comic books as a kid, and he had, a lot of it was him doing his own thing. I mean, there were tie-ins, but that wasn't like it didn't feel like a big piece of
I think
Spider-Man.
that's-
It was more the personality of Spider-Man himself. Like
But he was
being a
the-
teenager and dealing with all of his personal things, as opposed to.
But I think that's the fun
he
of
did do
it
a lot of
from
team
a
ups, don't get
fan
me wrong.
perspective,
What
though.
about
is
Spider-Man and Friends? Spider-Man and Friends, and also the New Avengers, where basically between Spider-Man and Wolverine are more or less the leaders in the way that Captain America and Iron Man are the leaders in the.
Yeah, but see, I think that was a
original
shift in
Avengers.
it. I feel like that's a shift in focus. Like part of the reason that I loved Spider-Man growing up, and that I still love Spider-Man, is the backstory of Peter Parker
Yeah.
himself. And
So you want to just keep
the sort of
seeing
psychological
reboots.
component. I think the team. I'd like I'd like to see more of the solo Spider-Man stuff.
Agreed.
Like even the other Spider-Man, so to speak. The ones who eventually
Well, yeah.
become Spider-Man.
Initially, I was hoping
which we
like-
kind of got from the new animated movie.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I also really liked the original 3 Spider-Man movies. The third one, obviously, there's some shit that really sucked about it. But
Memes from the third one.
overall, it was a decent movie. It just had some really generic.
well, you know what, though? I
parts
mean,
to it.
me as a
was gonna
in
say-
my opinion, for fan, going back a little bit to how fans would feel, I like it kind of 50-50. Half he's doing his solo thing, and then half he's in the Avengers, because I feel like
It's a good
that's
time.
where Spider-Man has grown to.
Yeah.
And I feel like after those 3 movies with what's his name?
Tom Holland?
No,
Oh,
Toby.
Maguire?
Yeah, Toby. McGlear. Sorry, I don't like him. Anyway, but I feel like they did the 3 movies, and then I was like, boom, we're done with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And
Well-
it kind of made it sad for the fans.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is a good way for Spider-Man to keep going and to keep growing, just like how Iron Man did, just like how Captain America did.
Yeah. I mean, good example.
It just
The
grew.
thing
Bring it
was
with-
that Tobey Maguire was too old to be Spider-Man to start with.
Hell yeah, he was.
But
I think they can.
And you know what? He was a
really
great
do
Peter
that,
Parker.
Hold on, real quick. I didn't finish my initial idea.
Sorry.
I wanted to see when I was a kid and those original Spider-Man movies were coming out. I wanted to see up to like Spider-Man 7. I didn't even think that the Hobgoblin would come out until like at least Spider-Man 4. That was like a surprise during Spider-Man 3.
Right.
And it was really they did that really shit.
Like if they all try to smush it together.
Yes.
So I was hoping to see I was hoping to see Electro. Like, imagine
Vulture? No. And that's what I was going to say. I want to see more standalone Spider-Man movies with his villains. Rhinoceros, Carnage, Venom. Okay, Venom gave us kind of like a little taste of what's to see. But at the same time, like, I'm okay with more Spider-Man films. I don't care if they're ran by Disney or Sony. I just want them to be good, per se.
And that's the thing.
I kind of feel like that's what Sony tried to do with their animated feature, like bringing the Spider-Verse into effect. You now have opened up the entire universe to.
It was such a great movie.
It was fantastic.
It was a fantastic movie.
Don't get me wrong. I love Into the Spider-Verse. I don't care too much for exploring the Spider-Verse as much as just the original Spider-Man has so much already that they
I was about to say
dealt with before going anywhere.
I mean, there's even a Mexican Spider-Man.
Tony, even going on to what you were saying, I heard that they were already talking about making a Gwen Spider-Woman thing, and I was like, well, what the hell just happened to Spider-Man?
Like,
I mean,
let's
we
work
just
on
got
the
on
initial.
this. I was about to say we just got on this road of great Spider-Man movies.
Ty, you can't say that. That's sexist. You can't say that you don't want a female Spider.
How dare you?
No,
Spider-Gwen is an alternate universe, right?
Right. Yes.
Because in that one, Peter Parker dies. Right. Or,
her best friend, which is Peter Parker, and he passes away.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, you learned that in Spider-Verse, dipshit.
Yeah, she tells you.
What you're saying is,
but if somebody hasn't seen the movie, they don't.
I'm sorry.
If you haven't seen it yet, you need to catch up.
You have problems. It's on Netflix.
If you haven't seen it yet,
shut up. It's on Netflix.
That's not a major spoiler. That's a very minor spoiler.
She tells you like
she literally
25
tells you
minutes
that
into the
whole
movie.
Story. Yeah.
And
she's
then
like,
it slams her comic book down.
She's like, it's my turn for my introduction. Let me tell you.
She's like, I'm cool.
She's like, Spider-Man's dead. No, I'm kidding. Or no, Peter Parker's dead.
Spider-Man? More like Spider. No.
Spider-Man? More like Spider. Don't you dare. Anyway. But I think that goes on to like kind of what you were saying. It should be more, going into the superheroes and the supervillains of Spider-Man to go more into his world. Mm-hmm. But that's why I'm saying as a fan, I think it's cool that it went kind of 50-50. We did 2 movies of just Spider-Man and 2 movies of mix of Spider-Man and the rest of the Avengers. And as long as it keeps going with that 50-50, I think that it'll be, that's what was our goal was from the beginning. But
what are the
Tobey Maguire fucked it up. No kidding.
What are the quality of the movies coming out now that let's say it is 50-50?
Right.
I mean, will it still just be Spider-Man reboots of like the same origin story? Will we finally get more like standalone films with him going against other villains rather than the Goblin or Dr. Octopus?
Well, there's so much for Spider-Man. I think
exactly. There's a lot to do there, and I feel like it's being squandered because they're so focused on the financial end of like.
Well, let's face it, though. Tom Holland isn't gonna not do any Spider-Man, especially if the MCU. Because then he's going to be making
a lot of money.
Hell yeah!
That's a guaranteed career.
If they did cut a deal with Disney, which eventually they probably are going to cut.
Whether it's like,
they just don't think 50-50.
I was about to say, I think they know there's not really an option for that, but yeah, they're just holding out until they can get a deal that
I would love to
everyone can really.
Disney, I would love to see if Disney was like, fine, fuck you. And just
so he's like, wait,
interesting too.
Disney, wait.
I mean,
and just kind of like view the movies, the quality.
You
of the
just
movies
see a really
out.
small crew of Sony, and then you see a big ass thing,
army
Disney
of like Disney
walking away, and they're like,
just kill off Spider. Imagine if they just killed off Spider-Man off screen.
How about they just give all the rights to Spider-Man to Pixar and just start Pixar Spider-Man films?
Oh my gosh. That's too far, David. No kidding.
Is Pixar its own thing now, or are they still a subsidiary of?
I mean, they're just an animation studio that's
I was about to
part
say,
of
they're
Disney.
kind of-
It's Disney
yeah.
Pixar Animation Studios.
Yeah.
So
So it's
Pixar
still
is the
Disney, but
animated.
I think they're independent now.
Are they?
I believe so. I might be
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh,
No, I think
I might be wrong.
They
Are
are.
they an independent animating studio now?
I think so. I think they just
does
work with
Pixar
Disney.
have any serious animation though? Do they have any movies that they've done like a serious style of animation on, or
Exactly.
Is it all
Like-
basically sort of?
What do you
Cartoonish, right?
mean-
Like
what do you mean
childish.
What do you
Yeah.
mean by serious style of animation? You mean like less
Something that isn't
where
particularly
the
tied
subject
to
matter
Disney.
looks
soft, less
yeah, where it doesn't look like cartoony in some
More like gritty, I guess, what you're looking for.
Right. I don't think that Pixar's made anything with a gritty feel to it as far as their animation goes.
Mm-hmm. It's all
That I can think of. I could totally be wrong. I was just wondering if you guys could think of anything. 'Cause
I mean,
I
they
can't.
definitely have some dark themes.
they have the capability of doing so as well.
Yeah,
but-
Bugs Life.
For sure. I'm just
No,
saying
kidding.
like, they have a lot of experience making great kids movies. I don't know
I
necessarily.
cried
that
at The
you'd wanna give
Incredibles.
them
No,
a-
I'm kidding.
The
What was that,
Incredibles was
Josh?
greedy. Toy Story 4 was greedy.
What?
Andy, no.
I'll give him credit for The Incredibles being thick, but I don't know.
Being badass.
A little bit too thick. No, not sure what they were trying to say
Oh my
there.
god, I saw
That's funny.
saw a meme the other day that said that the company that Elastigirl went to work for made her suit the only one that could air because they wanted to see
her
that
boobs.
thickness.
the thick boobs, or
The
the thickness
ass.
of her.
It's the
Oh yeah, her
ass.
ass.
Yeah,
It's her ass. Yeah,
That's the draw,
Yeah.
guys.
Anywho,
There's
this
the
is
picture
not,
of her.
This
She's
is
like,
not Spider-Man talking anymore.
yeah.
Finding
Finding Nemo. His
Yeah.
mom died. Ha.
Yeah,
Ha.
Finding Nemo. No, well, I mean,
Dead mom.
I
Dead
mean,
mom.
Gimpfish.
Up. I hear. I haven't watched Up, but I hear Up.
Up is so.
Up is sad.
is very
Up is
sad.
Like,
So-
they hit you with the feels first 15
They
minutes
hit you
of the
with
film.
some freaking.
They're like, happy people, now sad.
So they're
Happy people
capable.
grow.
They're capable of doing it. I believe.
Brave. Didn't her dad die?
Story-wise, they
No?
can take a serious tone.
Inside
If they want to
Out-
continue
Inside
with
Out-
like animating and not have like a live action per se, they can.
Inside
But
Out
they do
was
have the
mental.
capability of like fabricating a more serious and like I guess young person to adult
But I think what
story.
I think what Josh is asking.
I just want to see them
art
do that
style.
before I give them the reins to something like.
Josh, I got one for you. Coco.
Coco.
That was shit was.
Coco,
I thought that
Coco
was
not
sad.
hard hitting.
Yeah, huh? I was like, I'm Mexican. No,
Only-
kidding.
Who died in Coco?
That's
It
why I
had a
hit
lot
me.
of
It's 'cause
dead
I'm Mexican.
people in it. It had a lot of ghosts in it, but nobody died in Coco.
It's because you're
Everyone
white,
died in
Josh.
Coco. I thought.
Yeah,
I'm like,
like,
everyone
that's
is
the
already
premise.
dead in
Like,
Coco, Josh.
everyone's-
Not kidding.
Well, okay, I
in
heard.
the underworld.
I've heard about Coco. I haven't watched it, but I've heard the premise. Spoilers.
Everyone
I've heard
dies,
the premise
okay.
is that
Recuérdame.
you only experience an
I am
afterlife as
all
long
I
as you're
am.
remembered, right?
What?
It is-
No,
The only
the
experience
idea
in
of Coco is
afterlife.
like you're
long as you're
only a
remembered.
ghost if people remember you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That
following
was
the
the thing.
Mexican
Mhm.
tradition of
It
like
even
Dia de los
shows-
Muertos on how
Mhm.
like we every anniversary of a family member's passing, we visit their grave and leave gifts as a remembrance of their and a celebration of the life that they had given us.
Right.
And the idea behind it is that we're celebrating their life so they can have a better life in the
Afterlife.
underworld. Yeah,
Right.
afterlife. Yeah. So that's why when in the movie it's depicted as a party, a fiesta, everyone's happy because for us, we want our family members who have passed to be happy and to be remembered, to
We
know
give them
that
food,
though
we
they
give
are
them
gone,
celebration.
though they are gone, we still care about them and their memory and the love that they had given our family is still like
This
in our
is my
hearts, per
grandma's
se.
ofrenda. We gave her one.
Yeah,
and
see, and it's
we
like
fed her bread and stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just like a celebration to celebrate the afterlife.
But
Yeah.
the point is that the reason it's sad is because
Because if your family forgets about you, you cease to exist.
yeah, and that was the main like underlying.
And they
like,
had a character
tone.
in the movie too.
Which
That
I
did
think is
saw
disappear.
the process.
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think is pretty sad because
Honestly, that got me a little. I was like,
that
I'll
one did
never
because
forget
like
you, Grandma.
when he disappears, you see a top of his hat missing and a top of his skull missing, implying that like he had taken his own life. You know.
I don't think that's
And then
I don't think that's because you guys are Mexican.
Oh yeah, anyone can pull that implication from viewing.
He's trying to take our culture.
No,
I'm kidding.
Culture vulture. I'm just kidding.
Pixar's the one that culture vultured.
No, they're celebrating us.
That's sad. That's sad, regardless. That's just
I know.
I think that, and I think that's. I do think that they have the capability of making a more serious movie,
right?
But the art style, I think, is where they have not yet shown anything that's too, that's not like, that's gritty or anything.
Yes,
like
and that is my point.
And that's why I ask: is Pixar independent from Disney? Because that would mean that Disney comes up with the ideas for, like, let's say a film, and then enacts Pixar to animate said film however they please.
Disney usually like helps release it and stuff, and then produced and directed and stuff is usually taken by.
They probably
Pixar
also give guidance on storyboards and.
Yeah, I think it's more of a. Sorry.
Would you be completely opposed to Josh? This is for you. Would you be completely opposed to a Spider-Man movie made by Pixar in their style? Even if they, say they have the death of Uncle Ben, and it's very gripping, and it really pulls those heartstrings. Would you be opposed to that just because the art style is different?
Well, let me put it to you this way: I was extraordinarily skeptical about when I saw the trailers for Into the Spider-Verse. I was very worried.
Same here.
I'm glad it was fantastic. But when I saw it was going to be like an animated movie, I was like, "Oh shit!"
Agreed.
Yeah, no,
I am so glad that I was wrong. But by that same token, I mean, I unfortunately I don't know the animation studio that they had do that movie. But I mean,
in my personal opinion, I honestly
think they could do it. I think they could do it. But I mean, if we're going to sort of do a reboot kind of thing with the focus on one animation studio, we do know that one animation studio can do it because we've already seen them do it.
Do you think maybe there's not a lot of gritty, full fleshed out animated films, hitting mainstream, theaters in the West because maybe our society might not be predisposed, to it? I mean, good example, not to tie in another culture's animation process, but looking at anime, most of it is animated and it is some, have very serious and adult tones behind it.
Right.
Though, a good example is when Akira hit the West, that movie, a lot of people who were going to watch this film in theaters here in the West were expecting a lighthearted kids film because it was cartoon.
Animated. Right.
And it wasn't until they were hit with the hard storyline, very gritty dystopian universe that really wouldn't stop any boundaries in regards to a child may seeing it in regards to censoring some items. And that's why kind of anime in the West took off from that film, because they're like, holy crap, you can fully flesh out a seriously toned film without having it to be live action or CGI, or without having it to just be too gory per se.
Right. And what is that movie? It's kind of it's kind of styled like Big Hero 6, but it was a girl.
Oh, Alita Battle Angel. Are you talking about that? It was kind of CGI.
I think
that one was legit. I did like that movie.
Yeah, that's not an animated movie.
That's
no. The one I'm talking about is animated. I'm trying to think about it. Yeah. I can't remember. It's something about robots.
If anyone knows, put it in the comments, please, in the chat.
Something about robots.
We are a little off topic though, so I don't know if you're.
We're way off topic.
Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
that's fine. I think overall we've kind of discussed. But
that should even go back to Spider-Man itself, because Spider-Man is such a big world, it's kind of like that. You can't just...
And the characteristics of Spider-Man himself are lighthearted and comedic.
The topic is not about not just
Well,
Spider-Man.
no, but I'm just saying
the controversy between Disney and Sony.
Yeah, and that whole
kind
of tug of war with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't think, do we have a lot more to talk about just the topic?
Our opinions, I guess.
I mean, I'm going into this. I already
have
very
I want Sony and Disney to make a deal good enough to appease fans of both film studios.
Agree.
Not a lot of fans.
I just want them to reach a deal so that regardless of who produces the movie on whatever side, that they're it gets made. I don't want it to be in a standstill on production
So
of any type of Spider-Man movie.
There's that's where it like breaks down. There's Spider-Man fans and then there's MCU fans, which I think MCU fans are way more common than like
Spider-Man fans.
than just Spider-Man fans.
Mhm.
Like
Right.
There's the main draw.
MCU is such a big thing.
Well,
now.
because Spider-Man in itself, even back in the day, would be considered more underground. I mean,
Well, I don't,
not
I don't wanna hear it
completely,
from
but like
MCU
more
fans,
like
and I consider myself one. Sorry, go ahead
You
finish you.
what kind of fans?
MCU fans.
I said,
Oh,
I said,
gotcha.
as far as MCU fans are concerned, they have a whole universe of other characters, and yes, I would like to see Spider-Man interact with those characters, but realistically, because I belong to both, I put a little more weight on. I want to make sure that all representations of Spider-Man are as good as possible, and
Right.
that I don't necessarily. I would rather see good Spider-Man movies not tied into the MCU than see okay Spider-Man movies because he has a couple of let's say longer cameos in an MCU movie.
Right.
And that's the problem because like the main draw of the MCU movies are like seeing all of those heroes like fleshed out on the
screen.
on the big screen.
Silver green. See, but I think that's the thing too, is that I think that if there was more of an in favor with Disney, even though they may not deserve it or however anyone else wants to think about it, but if there was more of a balance for Disney more than Sony, I feel like they would be able to produce a 50-50, actually not even 50-50, 100% and 100% of both lives of Spider-Man, MCU life and solo life. And I feel like they would be able to hold that better than Sony would.
So, but MCU is so the thing though is like if Sony made any Spider-Man movies without
Consultation.
without
Right.
Disney being involved, they can't have like a Nick Fury where he pops in and they can't have like they can't have Captain Marvel like be like, hey, we need you in in that movie, which is how the MCU works as a whole.
That's the main
Gotcha.
Yeah, see,
So-
I care more about the individual characters than I do about mashups personally.
No,
Like
I
even
mean,
individually.
I think
I
think
appreciate the mashups. Don't get me wrong, because there's continuity in that
super
universe.
fun.
But
I mean,
Yeah.
wasn't Far From Home, Spider-Man Far From Home, was that MCU?
that was MCU.
Okay, was there...
There was. Or Nick Fury was constantly acting. Did you watch it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh,
throughout the
okay,
movie,
that's right, that's
yeah.
right.
So.
I
That
mean,
couldn't happen, but that's the thing. Like
But
that's
see-
how the MCU works. Is it's always so. Before that, like the Iron Man movies and the Thor movies, they didn't have those end scenes where
Mhm.
they were approached by whoever, or they had like this little kind of
See, so, but you don't think it's possible that...
frosty or whatever, like sprinkling of
Right.
this next movie coming out. Oh, this next movie is coming out. They didn't really have that before the MCU actually was a thing, which is what a lot of people really love, and I think that's great too. But I think overall, I kind of agree with Josh where I would rather
Solo.
just have the individual movies, not have any tie-ins to an overall universe, even though it's great. But if that's our only options, it's one or the other, I'm fine with just Spider-Man being Spider-Man and never having to clash with the rest of the
other. Yeah. Agreed.
The other
I agree.
characters.
I mean, to be fair, with the way Ink Commanded and like a lot of the MCU movies like finished, I feel like Spider-Man did have enough. Like
Yeah,
per
Spider-Man's
se,
one
like-
of the only ones, though. I
Exactly.
mean, other characters
Mhm.
do have like a lot of kind of. I mean, especially getting into like like X-Men and Fantastic Four and comics like those. They have a lot of other shit to do, but like Iron Man and Thor and stuff in the comics, they became the Avengers very quickly as well. They didn't have a lot of. I mean, they did, but it was seem more like rehashing of older comics, where like Spider-Man has like all these different things already that can just based on the without any new ideas.
And see, for me, even the few tie-ins of Spider-Man into the overlapping of Spider-Man into the MCU wasn't really that significant for me. I mean, Civil War, like the heaviest piece was when he got snapped out. Like that was his big piece in that movie was that he dissolved. That was about it. Like even if that wasn't there, like it's like okay, so you guys took over and tried to make these Spider-Man movies so you could.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. Whichever one. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Yes, that's what I meant. That first one.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, okay, so you guys got us to care about Spider-Man in the MCU so that we could feel bad when he disappeared for a little while. I mean, that's kind of the way it felt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Gotcha.
There wasn't like on the interactions of overlap. Where they brought Spider-Man in. Like I didn't. I also felt like Spider-Man was really underpowered in the MCU. Just personally, I don't know why. I mean, maybe not in the standalone movies because I actually haven't seen. I think I've only seen one of them. But
yeah, I think the idea in the MCU
whenever there's a tie over, I'm like, why are they made him more of a joke as opposed to like sort of a powered superhero.
Yeah, no, but he's so new to.
I know. I was about to say.
I think the idea in that
it's the beginning of Spider-Man.
He's so new to being Spider-Man.
So they're more so capturing like his like awe and like excitement and being a part of.
They're
like,
capturing more of the Peter Parker side of it that we didn't get too much in the Amazing Spider-Man. Or even in Tobey Maguire's version, because like you said, he was a little older. He kind of matured it almost a little bit, So I feel like
I think maybe that's the structured position that I'm coming from too. Is that the comics that I read as a kid, as far as the Amazing Spider-Man, like they didn't tie so much into the greater MCU. It was mostly Spider-Man doing his own stuff. So when I look at him being a teenager and coming together with the Avengers, I never remember reading any of those. Like he had his teenager years, but then he didn't spend too long as Spider-Man in his teenage years before he's doing his bugle work and being Spider-Man. Like he didn't have a lot of teenage years in the comics that I read. It was mostly like they used that to build his backstory.
Yeah,
and then with
and
Ben's
also
passing and him,
he wasn't tied into anything else until way later, like after the original Avengers.
That's true.
So because they were working on Spider-Man, they weren't working on Spider-Man being Avengers. That's when Avengers got stale. They're like, let's
throw in
some more
Spider-Man,
heroes.
yeah,
Ant-Man,
right.
So
yeah, man.
Well, yeah, like taken from X-Men. See, I wish that Marvel could have just been Marvel and never sold any properties, because that would have been the best thing to me.
There's too much legality, so as soon as you sell a certain title, with it,
and and I was talking to someone about this the other day, is how remember when we were kids and like we just watched these cartoons and stuff and read these comics and everything, and we never thought that these were going to be these serious,
fleshed out,
very expensive properties.
Exactly.
It was just Marvel Comics and DC Comics, and we knew that those two were competitors. I mean, that was always kind of known, but there was never the idea that, oh, well, our whole, our whole understanding of these characters could be completely taken away from us by major corporations in an outside non-fictional setting. Like,
right.
Yeah, that just wasn't a thing before.
Absolutely. And it probably wasn't
imagine
even like something
DC,
in the back of our heads.
Imagine if DC bought Spider-Man.
Oh my god, that would be such
horrible.
strange.
I mean, not even the movies. I'm just talking about.
Like
imagine if Spider-Man started showing up in DC's comics.
Like Batman's like, don't worry, I got a friend, and it's just Spider-Man.
Everyone would be like, what the fuck?
There's a signal, but there's only a spider on it.
What, Josh?
They actually did do a couple of crossovers in the comic books, didn't they?
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with them, but I wouldn't be.
I think
for
there
me,
were
like, that's
crossovers,
fun.
but that was
But
like
imagine
a
if they
once
tried
in a...
to
Hold on, everyone's talking.
Sorry.
imagine if they tried to take the MCU and do like they did with DC and like to shrink it down and streamline it. Was like the New 52 or whatever. If they tried to do that with, who do you think they would cut?
I'm not entirely sure what you're suggesting.
No, I'm just saying. Okay, so DC. Well, this is as I understand it, and I don't have a lot of detail on it, but DC, because obviously they were having a tough time competing with Marvel. They reached a point where it's like, well, we can't keep going with all of these characters, so let's do a reboot. And they rebooted it with their biggest named heroes, and that's where they're at now, as I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, imagine if they tried to do that with the Marvel universe and
That's-
streamline all of Marvel.
That's what I heard was going to happen. But now it seems like they're just like, fuck it. We're going to continue with this. And I mean, that's fine. I'm not in favor of either direction. But no, yeah, I think most people would be really pissed off if they did that.
No.
But eventually it's got to happen.
That's
right?
True. Yeah, no, I
Eventually
agree.
people are going to be like, I want to see Iron Man again. Where's
Right.
Iron Man?
Yeah, and I mean, like, and then there's going to be a rebooted Iron Man film because
Or maybe they'll just throw in a new Iron Man. They'd be like,
that's true.
They're
someone
already
inherited all of
doing
Tony.
that, aren't they?
Like Tony died, Tom
The
Holland
idea-
couldn't take up his well.
The idea was
Right.
that
As I understand, isn't his daughter supposed to take over as Iron Man?
how many years is that
they were
going to be?
Maybe like
His daughter
10.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is he?
I mean, they may
even
end up
more?
Yeah.
trying
You'd
to
have
push
to
out
age all the
a female.
characters. I mean, also like putting into the idea that like
It won't happen for another
the
16
new
years.
Captain
No, I'm
America
kidding.
was who's in what was
It's a
his?
black guy now.
No, I know, but what was his Hawkeye? No, not
it's,
Hawkeye.
it's
No,
Bucky
it was-
Rogers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, no. In
Well,
the,
I mean,
Bucky.
I'm talking about movie wise. In the comics, yeah, it's Bucky, but in the movie, at the end of Endgame, remember?
Oh, it's not going to be. Oh, Hawkeye.
No.
Is he going to be?
No,
or
no,
the
no,
other guy.
it's like
The
Falcon.
Black Falcon. There you go.
Falcon
Him.
is going to be
The new,
just said that.
the new. Captain America.
Captain
Is he going to
America.
be Captain America though, or is he just going to be the
No,
new
he's
leader?
Captain
Yeah,
America.
because
No,
like,
he's
at the end of
Captain
the movie,
America.
Cap goes back in
He
time.
like gives him
Yeah,
the shield.
Okay.
And, like,
gives him
says
the shield.
he's Captain
you're
America.
right,
And then
yeah,
he says, that's
yeah.
when he says, like, oh, it looks better on you. And he's like, not this time. Pretty much saying, like, oh, like, it's for you. Like, you're the new cat. Like, pick up the baton, per se.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Now, like, with that being said,
is Captain America going to be flying around now? Is that
With some wings.
Because I feel like he has no.
He paints his wings red, white, and blue.
I feel like he has
Well, I
no
mean, the whole
profession
idea
in
was-
ground fighting and like throwing shields.
with
and stuff,
Captain America, is
like-
that he's like a super soldier. That's why he could throw such a heavy,
Mhm.
fucking, like, a shield around and shit.
He just threw a shield.
And that's the
at
whole idea
Vibranium.
why he was able to like pick up spoiler alert, Thor's hammer.
No,
Right.
that is because you're
because he was worth
Oh,
it.
okay.
or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah.
whole idea of the hammer is like it picks a warrior who's like pure of heart. And,
Even
like,
though Thor is a total fucking whore. You know what I mean?
he's like, I'm still worthy.
No, the hammer, like you have to. The hammer judges you worthy of wielding.
Yes.
I was about to say
Yeah,
worthy
it's
of
not
the hammer.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Not pure of heart. It dips. No, I'm kidding.
Whoa.
Are you saying
I could
that-
see with Chris Hemsworth's contract going up as Thor that now, ideally, I mean, even though his last movie was the last solo Thor movie was pretty good, I could see them going ahead and trying to bring in the female Thor and tying in that.
Oh.
Yeah, I could see them doing that too. I could see them tying in a female version of every character. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like to get too much into that, but I feel like the doing of that is in regards to our current political climate, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
That's only got so much longer left, guys.
Absolutely.
Like,
Agreed.
but
Till like it starts getting old.
yeah,
You
so
know?
everyone starts getting worn out. Like, really, we're doing this again?
Like more representation. Where's the white man?
We're
You know what
doing-
I'm saying?
We're doing Blues Sisters.
Pretty soon we're gonna be watching movies and like, where are the white women at? I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
I'm a
They better
woman.
do Charlie's Angels as dudes.
They still have to dress up like Charlie's Angel.
Charlene's Angels. I don't know.
Charlize's Angels.
Charlie's
There-
Devils.
Demons. You dip.
Devils.
Ooh.
Devils.
Demons.
Devils.
Demons.
Devils.
Demons.
Why demons?
Well,
Because why would it be devils?
Unfortunately, angels is like you can't gender an angel.
You can't.
Yeah.
Gender-
No, it's not about
Angels are non-binary.
No, I think it would be like the opposite of what an angel is, right? Wouldn't that be a demon?
Also, from what the Bible told me, angels have a bunch of eyes on their wings.
Also,
Are
from
you
what the
saying
Bible
that
told me, the devil
a woman
is
is
an
the
angel.
opposite of?
Yes, the devil is an angel, and he's very pretty. Apparently,
He is very pretty.
He's like beautiful. So I guess the devil is Harrison Ford because that guy, even in his old age, gorgeous. No homo.
I was about to say
About Robert
gay.
Downey Jr.
What about Robert Downey Jr.?
RDJ.
Okay, he's cool too, I guess.
I'm good. He's already Iron Man.
Anyhow, I think that's pretty much the end of the podcast.
That end of
It's
the
been-
podcast
it's
was
been about
not
2 hours.
good.
We did have. All right.
No.
We did have one more thing planned. We tried to order some of the chicken sandwiches from Popeyes to see how they really are, because everyone is fucking so excited about these things, and people are.
Yeah, like every fucking Popeyes in town is
People
like packed to the brim with
are-
fucking people.
And I'll pull up a video real quick. Just
It's like
for the-
when McDonald's brought back that special sauce. What is it called?
Szechuan sauce?
Szechuan sauce. Yeah.
It's like, God.
It's not even. Is it? I feel like it's bigger than that, right?
No,
Yeah, I
that
don't
got
think it's as
so
big as
big
that.
though. I don't know.
No, because
The only reason
But
why
that
it
was
wasn't
be-
crazy in the stores and stuff was because eventually they
You're
ran
arguing
out.
That
Well, that
the
was-
reason why it got so much publicity is because of Rick and Morty, and that the scene that they did in their newest season.
and
Right.
the people that were going crazy over that were just Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty fans.
But this
No,
is a
it
full-on
wasn't.
Viral, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that was fans of people that have liked it back in the day too.
But they were
And
jumping
when they
on the
canceled it.
bandwagon when the Rick and Morty fans.
Where's
started
that
the
video
fire.
we saw earlier, David? That
Why are these? I
brawling?
understand that they're big right now, but why are the sandwiches a big deal right now?
Just
I
because
don't know.
I guess they've never had
Hold on.
fucking chicken sandwiches. I mean, they had the
I was
po'
about to say because
boy.
they don't have sandwiches.
Yeah, like that. And see, that's the problem.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
That's so weird.
you throw fucking chicken on something, and it's like the greatest fucking thing, and you don't have fucking chicken, and like people are gonna freak the fuck out. Like, what's the problem with chicken? Like, why is fried chicken in between fucking
Here we go.
two pieces of bread so like great?
I have no idea.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, don't get me wrong. Like, I can
Ooh, it
appreciate
looks
a chicken
good, though.
sandwich,
Like, it has
but
fucking
especially
pickles.
if
Hold on.
Oh, what
it's
the fuck?
bread. You have the bread of the bun.
Wait, hold
and
on,
this
Josh.
Massively breaded chicken.
No, let him finish. Let him finish.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
And
my,
then it's
my
just
thought
like
is just it's like here's bread, and more bread. Here's some crunchy bread. Let's throw that on there. And maybe some
here's
Here's
some
some
pickles if
crunchy
you're
bread.
tired of the crunchy bread. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they got sauce.
I'm still gonna buy that shit. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it.
No, I
Not
mean,
to this degree,
okay,
though.
so they
yeah,
said it's
but
better
I mean,
than.
it was. Here's the other part that I don't understand, and I don't know if this is maybe just a cultural thing or
Maybe
what,
that's
but
why
it's
she
like,
never came.
The white guy with the bow tie, his restaurant had already done the chicken sandwich, and it was a big deal. And it was like, what was it? It was like chicken breast instead of the bread, where it was like chicken. I'm talking about KFC, by the way, where it's like chicken,
yeah.
chicken, bacon, where it was like the whole thing is this, and everybody was all up in arms, like this is going to give you a heart attack, and this is.
Where it was just like it was like
But
two.
Popeyes over here does it, and now it's a big deal, and everybody wants a chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
Well, no, but it's just a chicken sandwich. It's not bread. It's
You do
not
it to
chicken
chicken
instead of
sandwich.
bread.
It's literally just fucking chicken breast, bread,
So-
spicy mayo if you get a spicy, and fucking pickles.
So I think what the thing is, though, is everyone's saying how it's so much better than Chick-fil-A, which
Okay.
I never thought was. I never.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's just more. This current popularity
Yeah.
happens to be. It's because you can try to knock Chick-fil-A with
So-
it, where it's like, yeah, we're going
Yeah.
to get Popeyes chicken because you guys fucking suck.
Right.
So Josh, I did link a video. I'll tell you when to hit play on it, but
We still got a while.
Yeah.
So that's what we were going to do.
Very curious.
But so I ordered the Postmates order. We were waiting for almost 2 hours, and eventually it said canceled, and they gave me a $5 credit, which is not worth what we missed out
What'd
on.
you spend? Like,
I was about to say, didn't you buy it
nah,
already? Those bitches.
waiting for
Yeah. She's like, I'm taking the money because this is instead of suing you for stress. And
Yeah. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching.
Yes, thank you.
That's
Yeah.
that's the end of the podcast. Anyone
this
want
podcast
to?
got weird.
Anyone want to plug their social media or anything?
Yeah, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at _DADD.D_.
This is like some fucking Joe Biden.
All right.
shit.
Just go ahead and follow me
Real
there.
Joe.
And if you came for the podcast, personal message me. I will 100% respond because I'm lonely and have no friends.
You sound like Joe Biden. over here.
Wow.
Go to Joe303330.
Go to my personal message at david.lopez@aol.org.
You got
I'm on
social
social media as a witch's art. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
I'm not on Twitter, so don't try to look for me.
Follow me on Twitter at Garfield Bitch.
Sorry.
And Josh, I think that you don't do that. Give out information.
No,
Yeah,
it is not.
I don't want people to find me on the internet. I hide behind the internet. So
We respect Josh and his wishes.
He's one of those. He's one of those creepers.
Those creepers.
Anywho,
creepers.
thank you guys for watching.
Thank
those
you,
peepers.
guys. Appreciate
Bye.
it.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Goodbye.